There is something that almost everyone believes without ever questioning it. When life becomes difficult, we immediately search for something outside ourselves. We blame the economy, other people, bad timing, luck, circumstances. And sometimes, those things are real. Life can be unfair. People can disappoint us. Dreams can collapse without warning. But beneath all of those experiences, there is another truth, a quieter truth, one that most people never stop long enough to notice. Imagine two strangers walking down the very same street. The sky is identical. The weather is the same. The sounds are the same. The people they pass are the same. Yet, when they arrive home, they describe two completely different worlds. One says, "The world is full of kind people." The other replies, "People only care about themselves." One sees opportunity. The other sees obstacles. One notices possibility. The other finds proof that nothing ever changes. Who is right? Perhaps both of them, because neither person is experiencing the world as it truly is. They are experiencing the world through themselves. This is one of the strangest and most beautiful mysteries of being human. You never encounter reality directly. Every moment passes first through your memories, your beliefs, your fears, your hopes, your identity. Like sunlight passing through stained glass, the light never changes. Only the color through which it is seen. Most people spend years trying to polish the reflection. Very few ever think to look at the glass itself. And perhaps that is why the same lessons keep returning, the same arguments, the same disappointments, the same relationships, wearing different faces. Not because life is trying to punish you, but because it is quietly revealing something you have not yet seen. There is an ancient idea found in psychology, philosophy, and even the oldest spiritual traditions. The outer world does not simply surround you in ways far more subtle than we imagine. It responds to the person you believe yourself to be, not the person you pretend to be, not the version you present to the world, but the silent identity you carry when no one is watching, the conversation inside your own mind, the expectations you never speak aloud, the invisible story that quietly tells you who you are and what kind of life belongs to someone like you. That story becomes the lens through which everything else is interpreted. And over time, without realizing it, you begin calling that interpretation reality. But what if the life you've been fighting isn't your enemy? What if it has been trying to show you something about yourself all along? Because the greatest mirror you will ever stand before is not made of glass. It is made of perception. And once you learn to see that mirror clearly, you may never look at your life the same way again. You never see the world as it is. There is a sentence, often attributed to ancient wisdom. We do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Whether those exact words were ever spoken matters very little, because every human life quietly proves their truth. Imagine putting on a pair of dark glasses. At first, everything appears slightly different. The colors fade, the light softens, the world seems a little colder. If you wear those glasses for only a minute, you immediately notice they're changing what you see. But imagine wearing them every day for 20 years. Eventually, you forget they're even there. You stop saying, "The glasses are dark." You begin saying, "The world is dark." That is exactly what happens inside the human mind. Every experience you've ever had becomes another lens. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every success, every act of kindness, every fear you never healed. Little by little, they build an invisible filter. And before long, you no longer realize you're looking through it. You believe you're looking at reality itself. A child who constantly hears that nothing is ever enough doesn't simply remember those words. They become the language through which life is interpreted. Years later, that child may achieve remarkable things: a successful career, meaningful relationships, dreams once thought impossible. Yet every achievement still feels slightly incomplete. Not because their life is lacking, because the lens never changed. Another person grows up surrounded by encouragement, not because their life is perfect, but because someone taught them that mistakes are part of becoming. Years later, failure still hurts. Rejection still stings. But those experiences never become proof that they are unworthy. The event is the same. The meaning is completely different. This is why two people can experience the very same loss and emerge as entirely different people. One becomes more fearful, the other more compassionate. One closes their heart, the other opens it even wider. Life did not decide who they became. The meaning they gave to the experience did. Human beings rarely respond to reality itself. We respond to the stories our minds create about reality. Think about walking through a crowded room. Someone glances in your direction. Immediately, your mind begins speaking. They're judging me. They probably don't like me. I must have done something wrong. But another person standing beside you sees the exact same glance. Their mind says, "They look familiar. I wonder if we've met before." They seem kind. Nothing changed except the observer. This is why the world often feels like a mirror. Not because it magically rearranges itself every morning, but because your perception is constantly selecting what deserves your attention. The human brain receives millions of pieces of information every second, yet only a tiny fraction ever reaches your conscious awareness. Your mind quietly decides what matters. It searches for evidence that confirms the identity you already carry. If deep inside you believe people cannot be trusted, you'll notice every broken promise, every betrayal, every disappointment. Acts of kindness still happen, but they quietly pass unnoticed. Not because they don't exist, because they don't match the story your mind expects to find. The opposite is equally true. Someone who believes that life still contains beauty doesn't ignore pain. They simply refuse to let pain become the entire picture. Both people live on the same planet, yet psychologically, they inhabit different worlds. This realization can feel unsettling because it asks a difficult question. How much of what you call reality is actually interpretation? How many limits have become facts only because they've been repeated inside your mind for years? How many people have you judged without ever meeting them? How many dreams have you abandoned before life ever rejected them? There is a quiet danger in forgetting that perception is never neutral. The longer you carry an unquestioned story, the more invisible it becomes. Eventually, you stop saying, "This is how I see the world." You begin saying, "This is simply how the world is." And in that moment, the lens becomes a prison, not because it traps your body, but because it quietly convinces you that the walls have always been there. Every transformation begins with a single realization. Perhaps the world has not been showing you who it is. Perhaps it has been showing you how you have learned to see. And if the lens can be learned, it can also be changed. Every human being is born into a story they never chose. Before you ever learned your own name, someone was already teaching you what the world was like. Some learned that love had to be earned. Others learned that emotions should be hidden. Some were taught that success belonged to other people. Others quietly absorbed the belief that happiness never lasts. No one sat you down and formally explained these ideas. Life taught them, one experience at a time. A disappointed look, a harsh word, a broken promise, a moment when you felt invisible. The human mind does something extraordinary. It doesn't remember only what happened. It tries to understand what it means. And because children cannot explain the complexity of the world, they explain themselves. My parents are fighting. It must be because of me. They stopped listening. Maybe my voice doesn't matter. I failed once, so perhaps I'm simply not good enough. Little conclusions formed in childhood become invisible laws in adulthood, not because they are true, because they were never questioned. Imagine reading the same book every single year for decades. Eventually, you stop seeing the words. You only remember the story. That is what happens inside your mind. The story becomes so familiar that you stop noticing you are telling it. It quietly narrates every moment of your life. Someone doesn't answer your message. The story says they're losing interest. You make one mistake at work. The story whispers, you always ruin everything. A new opportunity appears. The story interrupts immediately. People like you don't belong there. Notice something. Reality hasn't spoken yet. Only the story has. And yet, most people cannot tell the difference. This is how an invisible narrative becomes an invisible prison. Not because it locks the doors, because it convinces you there were never any doors to begin with. There is something remarkable about the human brain. It is constantly looking for patterns. Not because it loves certainty, because certainty once meant survival. Long before modern cities and smartphones, recognizing patterns kept our ancestors alive. The rustling behind the trees, the changing weather, the footsteps in the dark. The brain learned that predicting the future was safer than being surprised by it. Thousands of years later, that same system still exists. Only now, it isn't merely predicting danger. It is predicting your identity. If you secretly believe you are always overlooked, your attention begins searching for evidence. 10 people appreciate you. 1 ignores you. Guess which memory stays with you? Not because it mattered more, because it matched the story. The mind protects what feels familiar, even when what feels familiar is suffering. That is one of the greatest paradoxes of being human. People rarely remain inside painful lives because they enjoy pain. They remain because pain has become predictable, and predictability creates the illusion of safety. This is why real change often feels so uncomfortable. Not because you're becoming the wrong person, because you're becoming someone your old story doesn't recognize. Imagine leaving a house where you've lived for 30 years. Every room holds a memory. Every hallway feels familiar. Even if the roof leaks and the walls are falling apart, there is still a strange comfort in knowing exactly where everything is. Now imagine moving somewhere new. The new house is brighter, safer, more beautiful. Yet during the first nights, something feels unsettling. You wake up forgetting where you are. You reach for a light switch that no longer exists. You instinctively walk toward the wrong room. Nothing is wrong with the new house. Your mind is simply trying to return to what it knows. Transformation feels exactly the same. The person you're becoming may be healthier, more peaceful, more confident, Yet part of you keeps looking back toward an identity that no longer fits. Not because it was better, because it was familiar. This is why lasting transformation is never about forcing a new life. It is about patiently allowing a new story to become more believable than the old one. Not overnight, not through positive thinking alone, but through small experiences that slowly teach your mind something new. Perhaps people can be trusted. Perhaps rest isn't laziness. Perhaps love doesn't always have to hurt. Perhaps you were never broken. Perhaps you were simply living inside a story that was written by fear. And if a story can be learned, it can also be rewritten, not by denying your past, but by refusing to let your past become the author of your future. Have you ever stopped for a moment and wondered why the same kinds of people keep entering your life? Different names, different faces, different cities, yet somehow the ending always feels familiar. Perhaps you've trusted the wrong person more than once. Perhaps you've given more than you received. Perhaps you've watched the same disappointment wearing a different disguise. At first, it seems like terrible luck, a coincidence, an unfortunate pattern. But eventually, a deeper question begins to emerge. What if life isn't repeating itself to punish you? What if it is repeating itself because something inside you hasn't changed yet? Imagine a teacher placing the same exam on your desk. You fail. Weeks later, the same exam returns, not because the teacher enjoys watching you struggle, because the lesson hasn't been learned. Life has a strangely similar rhythm. Until you understand a pattern, that pattern often continues to appear. Not because the universe is against you, but because your mind keeps recreating what it already knows. There is something deep within every human being, a silent desire for familiarity. It operates beneath awareness, quietly influencing who you trust, who you avoid, what opportunities you pursue, which dreams feel realistic, and which dreams you dismiss before taking the first step. Most of this doesn't happen through conscious decisions. It happens through invisible habits. Habits of perception. Habits of emotion. Habits of identity. Imagine a musician playing the same song every single day for years. Eventually, their hands no longer think. The melody plays itself. The fingers know exactly where to go. The conscious mind barely participates. Your emotional life works in much the same way. After enough repetition, certain reactions become automatic. Someone criticizes you. Your body immediately tenses. Someone becomes distant. Your mind immediately assumes rejection. A challenge appears. Without realizing it, you already expect failure. The event lasts only a few seconds, but your response was rehearsed long before the event ever happened. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation and create completely different futures. One person sees rejection and decides to never risk again. Another experiences the very same rejection and discovers a strength they never knew they possessed. The experience did not decide their destiny. The meaning they attached to that experience did. There is another hidden reason patterns repeat. Your mind is constantly trying to remain consistent with the identity it already believes. If deep inside you see yourself as someone who is always overlooked, you may unconsciously ignore people who genuinely value you, not intentionally, simply because their behavior doesn't match the story you've carried for years. Instead, your attention is drawn toward those who reinforce the old belief, not because they are better, because they are familiar. This is how the past quietly disguises itself as destiny. It convinces you that life keeps choosing the same ending, when in reality, your unconscious mind keeps choosing the same beginning. This realization can be uncomfortable because it shifts the question from, why does this always happen to me, to what part of me keeps participating in this pattern? That question is not about blame. It is about freedom, because the moment you recognize your participation, you also discover your power. Power does not begin when the world changes. It begins when awareness replaces automatic repetition. There's a quiet but profound difference between living by memory and living by presence. Memory reacts, presence observes. Memory says, I already know how this ends. Presence asks, what if this moment is different? Memory tries to protect you from yesterday. Presence allows you to experience today. Most people never notice how often they confuse the two. They believe they are responding to reality when they are actually responding to old memories, wearing new faces. Think about how many arguments have begun before the other person finished their first sentence. How many opportunities have been rejected because fear answered first? How many beautiful moments were missed because your mind was busy expecting another disappointment? Life cannot become something new while your perception insists on replaying the past. That is why the mirror keeps reflecting the same lesson, not because it wants to keep you trapped, because it patiently waits for the day you finally see what it has been trying to show you all along. And perhaps the greatest lesson has never been about changing the people around you. Perhaps it has always been about changing the person who keeps looking into the mirror. There is a strange moment that almost everyone experiences. You catch your own reflection in a window, a mirror, the screen of a dark phone. For just an instant before recognition arrives, you simply see a stranger. Then your mind quickly whispers, "That's me." But is it? Who exactly is this person you've spent your entire life calling yourself? Is it the face looking back at you? The name you were given? The career you built? The mistakes you regret? Or is there something deeper that has remained unchanged through every chapter of your life? Think back to when you were 10 years old. Your body was different. Your voice was different. Your dreams were different. Almost everything has changed. Yet somehow there is still a quiet feeling that the one experiencing life is the same. Who is that? Most people never ask this question because life moves too quickly. Responsibilities replace curiosity. Survival replaces reflection. And slowly, almost without noticing, we begin confusing what we experience with who we are. I failed soon becomes I am a failure. I was rejected becomes I am unlovable. I lost everything. Oh, becomes I will never recover. Notice what happened. An experience borrowed the language of identity. A temporary moment declared itself permanent. This is how the false self is quietly built, not through lies that sound outrageous, but through lies that sound completely reasonable. Imagine an actor who spends 40 years playing the same character every day, the same clothes, the same voice, the same emotions. Eventually, something dangerous begins to happen. The line between the actor and the character starts to disappear. The performance no longer feels like a performance. It feels like reality. Human beings often do the same thing. We begin playing roles very early. The responsible one, the strong one, the invisible one, the peacemaker, the perfectionist, the one who never asks for help. At first, those roles help us survive. A child learns that being quiet avoids conflict. Another learns that pleasing everyone creates acceptance. Another discovers that hiding emotions feels safer than expressing them. None of these choices are wrong. They are brilliant acts of adaptation. But adaptation was never meant to become identity. Years later, the child has become an adult. The danger is gone. The environment has changed. The people are different. Yet the role remains. Without realizing it, the adult continues performing for an audience that no longer exists. They apologize when they've done nothing wrong. They shrink to make others feel comfortable. They silence their own needs before anyone has the chance to reject them. not because the world demands it, because an old identity still believes it must. This is why changing your life can feel so incredibly difficult. You are not only changing habits, you are grieving a version of yourself, even if that version was built through fear. There is a quiet sadness that accompanies real transformation, not because you are losing who you truly are, because you are releasing someone who spent years trying to protect you. That version deserves compassion, not judgment. They carried you through seasons when they believed there was no other way. Honor them, thank them, but do not confuse gratitude with permanence. Some identities must be respected before they can be released. There comes a moment when you begin noticing something remarkable. The voice inside your mind is not always your own. Sometimes it sounds like a parent, a teacher, an old partner, a childhood friend, someone who once told you what you could or could not become. Years later, they may no longer be present, yet their voice continues living inside you, quietly shaping your choices, your limits, your expectations, until one day you pause long enough to ask a question that changes everything. Who taught me to believe this? Silence. Because for the first time, you realize the belief didn't begin with you. And if you learned it, you can also unlearn it. This is where freedom quietly begins. Not when the mirror changes. Not when the world applauds you. Not when success finally arrives. Freedom begins the moment you stop introducing yourself through your wounds, when you stop saying, "This is who I am," and begin asking, "Is this really who I am, or simply who I had to become to survive?" That question has the power to dissolve years of invisible conditioning. Because once you see the mask, you no longer have to wear it. And for the first time, the person looking back at you isn't a reflection of your past. It becomes a glimpse of who you have always been beneath every story you ever believed. Most people spend their lives trying to change what they see. They change their job, their city, their relationships, their routines. Sometimes those changes are necessary. Sometimes they are exactly what life requires. But there is something few people ever consider. If the observer remains the same, the reflection eventually begins to look familiar again. A person leaves one relationship certain they've escaped their suffering. Months later, they find themselves standing inside the same emotional landscape. Different face, different voice, different beginning, the same ending. Someone changes. Careers, believing their frustration belongs to the workplace. At first, everything feels new. Hope returns, possibility returns, energy returns, but slowly, almost invisibly, the same dissatisfaction begins to grow. Not because the new path was wrong, because the person walking that path was still carrying the same invisible story. This is one of the quietest truths about transformation. Wherever you go, your perception arrives first. Long before your body enters the room, your identity has already begun interpreting it. Imagine standing before a still lake. The surface reflects the mountains, the sky, the trees. Everything appears perfectly clear. Now imagine throwing a single stone into the water. The mountains seem to bend. The sky appears distorted. The trees begin to dance. Did the world change? No. Only the surface, through which it was reflected. The human mind works the same way. When the waters within you are disturbed, everything appears distorted. Neutral words sound like criticism. Silence feels like rejection. Distance becomes abandonment. Uncertainty becomes danger. Not because life has become hostile, because perception is no longer at rest. There is a reason moments of deep peace often feel so revealing. It is not that the world has suddenly become beautiful. It is that, for a brief moment, your mind stops arguing with reality. You finally see what was always there. Most suffering does not begin with events. It begins with resistance, the quiet insistence that life should have been different, that people should have behaved differently, that the past should not have happened. Resistance creates an endless battle with reality, and no one wins a battle against what has already occurred. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many believe it means giving up, settling, becoming passive. But true acceptance is something entirely different. It is seeing reality without demanding that it become something else before you allow yourself to respond wisely. Acceptance does not say, "This is all I deserve." It says, "This is where I am beginning." Those two ideas could not be more different. One creates resignation. The other creates clarity. And clarity changes everything. Because when the observer stops fighting, what is something remarkable happens. Energy that was once consumed by resistance becomes available for creation. Attention that was trapped inside yesterday returns to this moment. Possibility, which had been hidden behind fear, quietly appears. Not because life has transformed overnight, because you have. There's another illusion that keeps people looking in the wrong direction. They believe confidence comes first, then action. But life rarely works that way. More often, clarity comes first, then a single small action, and confidence arrives much later as a consequence. The observer does not change through grand declarations. The observer changes through repeated moments of awareness. Each time you notice an old fear without obeying it, the observer changes. Each time you recognize an old story without believing it, the observer changes. Each time you choose presence over automatic reaction, the observer changes. These moments appear almost insignificant, but rivers do not carve mountains through force. They do so through quiet, persistent movement. Transformation rarely announces itself. It happens in ordinary moments, in conversations where you no longer need to defend yourself, in silence that no longer feels empty, in decisions that once terrified you, but now simply feel honest. One day, you look back and realize the mirror did change, not because the world became someone else's, because the person looking into it is no longer searching for the same proof. And that is the beginning of a life that finally belongs to you. The world was never asking you to become someone else. There is a quiet belief that follows many people throughout their entire lives. If only I were more successful. If only I were more confident. If only people understood me. If only my past had been different. Then, perhaps, I could finally be at peace. It is a beautiful hope. But it hides a painful assumption. That peace is waiting somewhere outside of you. As though life were holding your happiness hostage. As though your future were negotiating with your worth. But look carefully at the lives of those who seem to have everything. Many possess wealth, recognition, influence, yet inside they carry the very same fear that haunted them years before. Because fear does not disappear when circumstances improve. It disappears when identity begins to change. For years, perhaps, you believed that life was asking you to become someone new, someone stronger, smarter, more admired, more fearless. But maybe life was never asking for another version of you. Maybe it was patiently waiting for you to stop hiding, the one who was already there. Think about the sky on a cloudy day. The sun has not vanished. It has not grown weaker. It has not forgotten how to shine. It is simply hidden behind something temporary. Most people live as though they must create their own light. They exhaust themselves trying to become worthy of existing, trying to prove their value, trying to earn the right to be enough. But perhaps you were never missing your light. Perhaps you were only looking through clouds that no longer belong to you. The beliefs, the fears, the identities, the stories, the roles, layer upon layer, covering something that was never broken only forgotten. This is why true transformation often feels less like building and more like remembering what curiosity felt like, remembering how naturally you once trusted your own voice, remembering that before the world told you who to become, there was simply awareness, alive, present, unafraid to exist. Perhaps that is why so many people describe healing in unexpected ways, not as becoming someone different, but as coming home to themselves. There comes a moment when something very quiet begins to happen. The world hasn't changed. People haven't changed. The challenges of life still exist. Yet somehow, everything feels different. The same silence no longer feels lonely. The same uncertainty no longer feels threatening. The same mirror no longer reflects a stranger, because the person looking into it has finally stopped searching for proof that they are broken. And once that search comes to an end, another one naturally begins. Not what's wrong with me, but what becomes possible when I no longer believe that something is? That question has no final answer, because every day offers another opportunity to see differently, another opportunity to respond instead of react, another opportunity to meet life without forcing it, to confirm an old story. The mirror will always reflect the one who stands before it, not to judge you, not to reward you, not to punish you, only to reveal what you carry into the moment. And perhaps that has been the invitation all along. Not to spend your life trying to control every reflection, but to become the kind of person whose presence naturally changes what is reflected. Because when your relationship with yourself begins to heal, the world does not suddenly become perfect. It simply stops being your enemy. You begin to notice the opportunities that fear once concealed, the kindness that pain once ignored, the beauty that hurry once overlooked, and slowly, almost invisibly, the life you were chasing begins to meet you where you are, not because the universe finally decided to favor you, but because, for the first time, you are seeing through clear eyes. So before you leave today, take one final quiet question with you. When you look at your life, are you seeing the world as it truly is? Or are you seeing the reflection of the person you have spent years believing yourself to be? Because the answer to that question may become the beginning of an entirely different life, one that was never waiting somewhere else, only waiting for you to finally see it.